Hello and welcome to Best Anime 4. This is the first episode of a show where I take a topic, usually a game, but it could be anything like a TV show or a book or a movie, and I discuss some anime with either close similarities or just things that I think a fan of that topic would enjoy. To start off with, we have the Doppelganger. For Halo, this is an easy one. Halo Legends is the Halo anime made by 343, etc. The anime is 7 episodes long, most of which are canon and they have varying lengths. It's a good anime with different animation studios for each episode, which can actually be quite good for newer fans to see the difference in art styles from different studios. As well as that, it's a really good way to jump into the Halo lore. As I already mentioned, most of the episodes are canon, bar the one that's essentially a parody of Dragon Ball Z. And it's a fun show. So, now we go into the more shows that have not necessarily a lot to do with Halo itself, but similar themes and whatnot. The first of these I'm going to do is Code Geass. Code Geass is a very popular anime and quite successful from a while back, with around 50 episodes, as well as some pretty good OVAs that are almost an hour long each. This show is similar to Halo in a few senses. One, it's the underdogs. Lelouch leads the rebellion, the Japanese rebellion, against the Britannian Empire. He's much like the UNSC in Halo leading the charge against the Covenant. It's an overwhelming enemy, but they still manage to, do their best and sort of win most of the battles. The main character, much like Master Chief, Lelouch is rather OP. His Geass gives him special abilities and whatnot. And like Master Chief, who can just charge into a room and wreck everybody, Lelouch can charge into a room and tell them all to kill themselves. Again, I'm referring to the dark scene, but you'll get it if you ever watched the first episode. Theme of the show is actually, or the time of the show is actually set sometime around 2010, but it's a parallel world that's far more futuristic than our world nowadays, which again is similar to Halo. It's sci-fi. I already mentioned overwhelming odds, so that was a bad scripting on my part, and it's a very epic series, much like how it feels epic when you're playing through Halo's storyline. The Code Geass show is pretty epic, and it has one of the best endings around, much like Halo 3's ending. Second on this list is FMAB, or Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Considered one of the best military animes ever, if not one of the best animes of all time, it is made by Studio Bones, which is a very famous studio, and has 64 episodes. The themes and topics of this show can sometimes be similar to Halo, with dark topics, religion coming into play, Genesis, and of course the topic of alchemy being the main thing. In comparison to Halo, it has a lot of military. It's the main focus of the series in a way. It's definitely a military show with lots of ranks, characters that you really get to know well, lots of development. It's got sci-fi elements, although technically they're more fantasy because it's in the past, not the future. It has epic music, much like Halo's epic soundtrack. Some of FMAB's music is wonderful. So, onto the next section, which is gateway animes. Now, these will vary week to week depending on what I've seen and what I want to suggest. This week, we're going to suggest the moe anime things. This is a genre I haven't really delved much into because I don't know, it's something I've never really delved much into, but there are a few shows I've seen from it. One of these such shows is Strike Witches, which is a military moe show. In a World War I or II set timeline, above Europe appears a sort of black holy kind of thing, out of which come these aliens called the Nurai. The Nurai go around with laser beams destroying stuff. And because normal military combat doesn't work against them, witches, which in this world have always existed, are equipped with a thing called striker units, essentially magic-powered feet planes. The pictures on the screen will probably help. They also become Furies when this happens. Now, keep in mind this is an ecchi moe, so it really isn't everyone's cup of tea. But if your friends or someone has been asking you to try out a moe and you haven't found one to interest you, at least this one has the military aspects to it. All the ranks and most of the uniforms the characters wear are actually real ranks and uniforms depending on the country the characters are from, with the exception of the main character who for some reason just wears a school uniform throughout the first two series for no real reason. There isn't a whole pile of similarities other than the ranks and the uniforms. There is the whole alien enemies and overwhelming odds again. But overall, it's just a good way for a Halo fan, if you're, got friends asking you to try moe, it's a good way of getting into it. Number 5, and the second gateway anime, is The Familiar of Zero. Now, this gateway is a gateway into a load of different genres. It's a gateway into adventure, action, harem, romance, and just even military if you were new to anime. But you're a Halo fan, so you're not new to military. The show starts off as a relatively light-hearted sort of school anime but becomes, especially after around episode 6, it starts to become a lot more deep and an actually really good show. The character building in the show and the world development is more than most fantasy shows. And once you get to season 2, the war element and the military element is huge. The show goes over all sorts of things, like young rulers, the decision to start a war or not to start a war, the decision to send child soldiers in. Now, it's not too deep on that topic, but it is there. The topics of revenge, the topics of whether murder is still murder even if you're doing it as part of your country to defend your country. It goes over a lot of deep topics, and the second series truly is a wonderful thing that any military lover who likes comedy as well, especially generic comedy, can really enjoy, as well as that the romance and harem elements are really quite fun in this. The harem isn't always overdone except in series 3 and 4, where there are a couple episodes where it's quite prominent, but it's not too in your face and there's no nudity, so it's a good way to get into that genre. And as for comedy, it was one of my first, and since then I've been hooked on anime comedy, so there's that for you. Finally, the last section is the bonus animes. These are animes I'm not going to talk about in full because there's just too many to talk about, especially for topics such as animes Halo fans would like. But if you've seen the ones I already listed, or you weren't interested in any of them, you might be interested in some of these. First of all is Breakblade. This is a 6 movies stroke 12 episodes, so they're each 40 minutes long, but if you were to divide them into 20-minute sections, they'd be 12 episodes. It's a show about a small, semi-futuristic, semi-fantasy world where there's mechas, magic, etc., etc. The whole idea is this country fighting against a much bigger country against overwhelming odds. Then we've got Blue Steel, a really good 3G anime if you want to get into that sort of thing. 3G? CGI. It's a show about the Navy, actually, which is something I haven't mentioned on this list yet, although there are elements of that in Strike Witches. It's a good show, especially if you're a sort of a Navy buff, although it might not be too accurate. It's fun. Again, overwhelming odds, the underdogs, and a lot of high tactics in this. Lots of tactical stuff. Other ones I could mention off the top of my head without really thinking about it. Guilty Crown comes to mind, something I finished recently enough. Like Horizon maybe, although it's not really military. And there is a lot of other ones too. So if there's another one you'd like to suggest, or I didn't list here, maybe your favourite or just one you enjoyed, why not say it down below in the comments. And if you enjoyed this list or found one that you watched and enjoyed, I'd love if you liked the video or subscribed. Thanks for watching, I've been your host, and I'll see you next time. Bye. See ya.